Hello, this is Cyby again. At the end of my last video, I kind of introduced Niri, and I was talking about how Niri was, what reinvigorated and reminded me that Linux really is fun. And so I promised that I would look into or demonstrate more with Neri, and I decided to do that, but to also, on the same lines, kind of talk about my journey through window managers in Linux. Um, like many of you, I started on X11, and if you watched the previous video, you'll know that I actually started with Ubuntu in the GNOME desktop environment. I switched to KDE, another desktop environment, before finally going with some window managers, some tiling window managers specifically. I had installed IE3 on that same netbook that I mentioned earlier. KDE Netbook Edition was good enough for that paradigm, the smaller screen and everything, and I did like it, but that system really didn't have the the system resources to run, specifically the RAM, to run that KDE very effectively. And that's when I got prompted to, like, okay, well, maybe I need something lighter, and I tried OpenBox, but then I was like, well, what about just a window manager? And so that's what I ended up with, was kind of exploring. And I started with IE3, and then I went really wild and started with Xmonad, which was interesting because Xmonad configuration is more than that. It's, you're writing your config docs in Haskell. You can use functions. You can do all sorts of things that I really didn't do. But it was interesting to kind of have that type of configuration where you could literally just create a binding that launched a Haskell function that could also launch a program or launch another script. It was really cool. And then that also got me into another similar system called Qtile. Um, and Qtile is like Xmodad in its configuration system, except it uses Python. And that actually led me into this kind of exploration of Wayland window managers, because Qtile had a Wayland session, and as far as, or a Wayland binary, where they had a basic compositor that interfaced well with Wayland protocols, and you could actually use Qtile with Wayland. And so I just went into mine. Actually, my system, I wanted to show one part of the system that I don't think I showed off. The system actually doesn't have a display manager. So when I boot up the system, I have it in verbose boot. So I get the whole, you know, all the the system starting up, the kernel messages, the different systemd targets, all of that comes up, and then I just get dropped right to your standard Linux login screen, which is this. Everybody's, typically when you see this, something has gone wrong with your system. But this is how I have it set up. I'm going to switch back to here real quick, so you don't see my username and password. But then, you know, when I get into the system, um, I am brought to just a prompt, just a TTY. And then what I would do to get into Qtile at the time is just type in Qtile Wayland here. And then that would bring up the window manager. Um, Qtile's Wayland uh, session, or Wayland mode, binary, whatever you want to call it, is still experimental, and they do warn you about that we're working on Wayland support, but it's still experimental. And I did run into a couple issues with it. So the next one I tried was Sway. Everybody was like, "Oh, Sway is perfect for um, Sway is perfect for um, a Wayland compositor." And it comes with like Qtile, it comes with a bar, the Sway bar, which actually has um, system notifications, a system tray widget that is part of it. Um, I'm not sure. Yeah. The it's a tiling window manager. It's a manual tiler. So when you launch another window, it just actually this one is not. Oh, okay, yeah. It does them in columns, and if you want to split, if you want to split it, you have to manually split, vertically, and so it does work, but it's not always the best. It's not like a perfect layout where you can really kind of mess around with your window placement. And I've actually been not been in Sway very much over the past while because um, I kind of went into Sway and I got it, and you'll notice this is basically a default configuration. Um, because I got into Sway and I'm like, it's good and all, but it's missing some things. It doesn't have animations. There's no window blurring. So it's not my favorite of the window managers out there. And I quickly found out that there was a different one, and I saw this or I showed this in in my last video, and that was Hyperland. So Hyperland is an auto tiler, and it's got all of those. It's got all of those wonderful features, all the nice animations. I will show it again real briefly. It is of course still not set up nicely with Waybar, so I will be killing that. But it works just like any auto tiler, where it's going to put it in a nice layout, and yeah, you can move your windows around, but you get these nice animations, you get window blurring, um, everything works. You have gradients with your window decorations, which is just the border. um, it has built-in support for X Wayland, which a lot of the compositors do, except for the one that will be the main focus of this video. Um, but this is what I was using for a while. I was using Wayland, or I mean, I was using Hyperland, and I even started getting into the Hyperland ecosystem. The desktop, by the way, is being provided by PC Man FM. They actually have a desktop starter, so you can start it up in this mode where it displays desktop icons and all of that fun stuff. But I I liked Hyperland, um, but I didn't really use, or I guess the problem with Hyperland was that it it was the configuration was constantly being changed and updated. I think that slowed down now, where like the way it was configured and the type of functions that were available, or I guess keys, because this isn't like Haskell, like Xmonad or Qtile, where it's done in a scripting language. But the type of keys and stuff where they're renaming them, they're removing a lot of them. Um, So it wasn't the best system where I mentioned it in the last video. I would kind of pop in, log in, and I'd get messages like, "Hey, you need to fix this." Again, that seems to have slowed down, and I might go back to Hyperland in the future. But I have kind of the focus of this video now, which is Niri. Um, and Niri is better configured, I think, um, uh, uh, for Waybar and everything. Um, it does a good job. And I haven't had any issues with Niri in terms of how it's configured. I didn't really do much. I changed a few colors. The desktop is still being provided by PCman FM, so all of that still works. But now it works a little bit differently. So like Sway in a way, um, it starts up all of your windows in columns. But if you notice, when I had three terminals open in Sway, it just kind of shrunk them so that each one would fit in that display, and so you would lose a lot of horizontal space because depending on the size of your monitor, as you're resizing the or as you're adding more windows, it would shrink down, and yeah, you could start tiling them to reclaim some space. And you can do that here too. Like I can tile I can tile those windows, manually, just like I did in Sway. But the nice thing here is I have a unlimited, essentially horizontal plane where I can just keep adding windows, and I can have you know all of these windows and then just scroll through them, and they're all they're all still here, they're all running. um, they're just not all visible, and it's um, a good system for being able to just have a bunch of windows on one workspace without having them worried about them getting really small and hard to see. um, and I like it. And of course, you still have multiple desktops. You can. I have. Well, I've lost my cursor. Here, cursor. But I have multiple desktops. There's even an overview mode, which when I was originally recording the when I was originally recording the video, the last video, this wasn't available on Manjaro yet, but you have the overview where you can see your active workspaces. You can see all of the windows. You can scroll through each of the windows just with your arrow keys. You can use um, the mouse to kind of drag windows to different spots, different workspaces, however you want to do it. It's nice. It's a nice to have. It doesn't have window blurring out of the box, but it does have a lot of good animations for helping, which I like because it helps me figure out where the windows are going to go. That's why I like having animations. It's not just a pretty effect for me, it's kind of a necessity, so that I know where my eyes need to focus when I open a window. If I close a window, I know that window's gone. This window has moved in. That's now here. When I have uh, move to a different view, I know I know what to expect, and I think that's what's very important with the animations. They're not just eye candy for me. It's kind of helping me orient where I need to look. Um, but as far as Niri, the reason I'm using it is mostly because it works for me. I have the bindings. I can make this, take up all of the, all of the view. I can have it just do the third. I can have it go a little bit smaller, a little bit larger. Um, so I have those working. I can even, I can even resize the window. Um, oh yeah, I think it's actually Command and right click. But yeah, I can resize them, um, kind of just any way I want to. Can move them around. Um, this isn't a floating window at the time, so it's going to try and snap it into a specific, column. But I can make it float, and so I can have a floating window. I can resize the floating window. Um, make it smaller, kind of move it around. So, I could write notes here and have like notes on my, my, or like a script here, and it's like just kind of tucked away in the corner. I could even make it so that Cyby would cover this, by changing the size, so you can't see, you can't see it, but that's why I like it. And it's really easy to kind of learn the key bindings. They have, you saw it earlier, they have the little hotkey reminder that you can bring up at any time if you forget. Um, so for me, Niri just kind of makes sense, and it's it is a different paradigm than your standard tiling window managers, whether it's an auto tiler like Hyperland or a manual tiler like Sway. This isn't quite either of those. It's more of a it's a scrolling tiling window manager where everything just kind of scrolls on that same plane. So anyways, that was kind of like how I got here. Um, and I am planning on exploring some more window managers that I just heard about. I mentioned that Sway doesn't have very those animations that I like. They don't have window blurring or anything like that out of the box, but there is Sway FX, which is a kind of fork of Sway that adds some of that stuff back in, so you can have fancy window decorations, you can have window blurring, you can have animations. So I might take a look at that. And I just found out that there's like 4 or 5 other window managers that are Wayland specific, that I might want to take a look at. And again, this speaks back to the last video talking about how Linux is fun. It can be fun to kind of explore these these different systems and different ways of doing things on your computer, and not just stuck with the same thing all the time. Yes, you can kind of customize Windows, and you can kind of customize Mac OS if you have the right tools and the right knowledge. And yeah, you in Linux, you do kind of need the right tools and the right knowledge too, but the learning curve and discovering these things is a lot easier in Linux than it is in those two operating systems. And there's just a lot more flexibility. With that flexibility, we do have some pain points. Linux is not perfect. No system is. But if you like to tinker, and I think that was the main point of that video, is if you like to tinker, if you like working on your computer, and you like making your computer yours, you like learning about the systems, then Linux is for you. Linux is always going to be fun for you. It's just you can get into a type of fatigue when things don't work and you need them to work. So it's like when I kept getting error messages in my configs for Hyperland. It was annoying because all I wanted to do was log into my system the way I normally log into it and just work. And then I would be presented with this error message, and my brain is like, well, I got to fix this. I can't just leave it. And of course, I would do kind of a half baked job of fixing these things, and not really ever buttoning it up, because I want to get it done. I want to get the error message cleared, and then just go about my day. So I think you can grow out of Linux in a sense where things just aren't as fun anymore. But you can also continue to love Linux. And yeah, I got to this point where I had Linux fatigue. But I'm kind of moving past that and rediscovering the joy of being able to make the system yours. And who knows, if these videos take off, I might love Linux even more. That's all I wanted to demonstrate for you today. A little bit about Niri. If you want to know anything else about Niri, if you want more demonstrations of how Niri works, just let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. At this time, that's really all I'm doing this for. I really just want people to rediscover or discover for the first time the joys of using this operating system, which we call Linux, which I'm going to go into a little bit of that too. So maybe the next video will be, Linux, and GNU/Linux, and what the difference is, and why not everything on Linux works with every system. But we'll see. Those videos have kind of been done, but maybe I can bring my own take to it. But that's all I have for this video. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.